Welcome, everyone. My name is Liz Herrera, and I'm the Director of Career Development within the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Welcome to our LAS Career Coffee Chat, where we invite professionals to speak about their career trajectory and some potential opportunities that they have available at their organizations. Today, it is my pleasure to welcome one of our very own LAS alums, Emily Krzyminski. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, and so Emily, you are the Assistant Director of Operations in the Pathology Laboratories at UI Health. And so today, before we start talking a little bit about your current role, I think it'd be great for students to hear a little bit more of your career trajectory. You are an LAS alum, and so I would really want to take them down your path and how you've arrived at where you are at today. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, sure. Let's start wherever you'd like to start.
Sounds good. So when you grad, your background, you have a bachelor's in art history.
Sure. Yeah.
From UIC. So what made you decide that that's what you wanted to major in when you were a student here at UIC?
So when I started at UIC, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So I knew for sure I was going to be pre-med. So I needed to have some type of science. So I started my career as a bio major, double majoring in the classics, actually. As I started going through classes and doing a lot of volunteer work, and student employment opportunities and laboratories and other places on campus and on the medical campus, I realized, well, maybe being a doctor is not really for me. I think maybe I want to do more research-based career options, right? So I kind of refocused my trajectory there. I was no longer pre-med. I decided I'm just gonna be a classics major, right? I'll be a classics major. I'll take the science classes, and I really like research. I think that's what I want to do. But, life always has different, plans for us. The classics program was dissolved at UIC, so I had to switch gears quickly. I'd always loved art history. So it was like a natural option to kind of segue into the arts versus the classics. They're very related, so it wasn't a huge transition. I was still able to complete my degree in 4.5 years instead of extending it much further to, change that path. But I continued working in labs, and I loved working in labs. I still talk to the people I worked at UIC with as a student to this day. I even see them sometimes on campus. Sometimes we'll grab lunch together. So it was lifelong friends and mentors that I was building as a student that I wasn't aware I was making those types of relationships back then, but I'm certainly glad that I have them. But then after I graduated and I was working in the labs for almost all 4 years I was a student, they hired me on full-time in a research lab at UIC. The way research works on our campus and in campuses across the country is if you're not funded, if you can't secure grants, unfortunately, sometimes you have to move location. So the lab I was working with at that time left the university. They went to another university in Michigan. I got another job at UIC working in research, the research imaging core, histology core. So I was doing a lot of research for a lot of investigators all across UIC, but also across Chicagoland and across the country. These are people who are doing research in pathology and need pathology services done. And that's honestly where I fell in love with path labs, right? Doing all the bench science and learning how to process tissue and contribute to research. It was animal research and some human research at the time. I just loved it. It really somehow combined both the art that I loved as an undergraduate in art history and the science I love starting out in undergrad wanting to pursue medicine. I specifically was working in anatomic pathology, and I still was up until very recently. And that's the area where that's the field where we work with the tissues. If you're familiar with looking at tissue under a microscope, these beautiful complex stains, it was the perfect combination of both worlds for me. So that's kind of where I ended up from an art history major into the sciences. And then from there, I worked for several years in the research histology core. I left briefly to move into the private sector, realized I had made a big mistake and came back to UIC under UI Health. And that's where I made the move into the clinical laboratory space. I started as a supervisor, worked my way up to manager, and now today I'm the assistant director of operations.
Yeah, wow. First of all, I think this really resonates or will resonate with a lot of our students who are interested in pursuing a medical degree or something in the healthcare industry. And so I really enjoy hearing how you pursued your interest in art history, but you still had that curiosity for healthcare, and you took that leap within laboratory work. Now, I'm curious, how did you find these positions working in the lab? Like, at the, when you were a student, how were you accessing these resources or opportunities to work in these laboratories?
So my very first experience in the laboratory, it was actually in Dr. Kaplan's laboratory in the West Campus. He was really good friends with one of my uncles. They went to college together, and he knew that he had a laboratory and always looking for volunteers. So I started out as a volunteer in a lab. That's really what it was. And then after that, I just reached out to other labs that looked interesting to me and asked, hey, I'm interested to learn what you do. Do you have opportunities for volunteers? Can I shadow? Almost nobody will say no to a volunteer or a shadow. And if you are consistent and show that you're willing and able, and that you can actually provide hours on a regular basis, most people are open to you having some type of student employment opportunity with them as well. And so that's where it went from there. Like, I always ended up volunteering first or shadowing, and then it naturally just evolved into, well, you're spending so many hours here, why don't we just pay you to be here? You're contributing, let's pay you. And that's honestly similar to what we do now. We in the Path Labs, we do have a posting for lab aides on Handshake. But also we have people all the time at various education levels asking us to volunteer, to shadow, to understand what we do in the Path Labs. And I would encourage everybody to take advantage of that. And maybe your interest isn't Path Labs, that's fine. If you reach out to anybody at UI Health or anybody in pharmacy or nursing, if they don't have the bandwidth to sit with you or let you volunteer or shadow, they probably know somebody who can and can direct you their way. I think everybody who works at UIC or UI Health has a commitment to education, and not just medicine, but just education, because we're an academic university. And I think everybody is willing to put in, the extra time needed to make sure that the next generation is able to see what options are out there so that they can make an educated decision, because it's you don't always know. I mean, look at the story I just shared. I jumped around several different majors. I didn't know what I wanted to do, or I thought I knew what I wanted, and it changed. And it's okay not to know. All I can say and suggest to people is try things, try new things, try lots of things, because the more you try, the more experiences you have, and you can make a better decision on what you want to do in the future.
That's great advice all around what you just said. I think trying things, being curious, exploring. And then UIC, I mean, we have so many opportunities to get involved. But even just what you shared in terms of strategy. So one thing that stood out is tapping into your network, right? And in your case, it was a family member, but I think that there are different types of people in your network, especially as UIC students, that can help open those doors. But then the other thing that you said that was so key is just reaching out, but even offering to volunteer, because that can definitely be an opportunity to open doors, and asking for shadowing. So not being afraid to actually reach out. And UI Health obviously is, our neighbor And I'm sure there are a ton of opportunities. So I think it's good that you were brave enough to reach out, explore, and that you were able to navigate some of these laboratory experiences. Now, other than, it sounds like you did a lot of lab work. By any chance, were you involved in other things like internships or other extracurriculars?
Yes, I was a part of an internship right after high school. It was called Ascend. I don't think it's available any longer at UIC. Maybe it is, I'm not sure. But it was for STEM majors, right? At the beginning, I was a bio major. I was going to medical school, right? That was the plan. And it had us on campus for the entire summer before our freshman year. And it really connected us, not just with students that were going to be in our graduating class, but with opportunities across campus, laboratories across campus, job opportunities across campus, really geared towards STEM majors. So that, I mean, was an excellent opportunity. And I would recommend to anybody interested in that to explore internship opportunities, volunteer opportunities. I mean, some of the people, one of my best friends today is a person I met in that Ascend internship program. Like he lives in a different state, but we make it a point to meet each other at least once or twice a year. Every year we talk every week. I mean, these are lifelong relationships you can build in these internships while you're going to school, and you might not realize it at the time. So trying anything and everything, searching for opportunities, it's so important. You are your best advocate, so you have to do the legwork and the search yourself.
Yeah, we definitely encourage students to explore internship opportunities, but I really love to hear how you were able to also build relationships. I think that's true. You know, being a college student, you build that your network, and they become lifelong friends. Sometimes it sounds like. Now you have your MBA, right?
Yes.
So, you know, again, the diversity of your credentials from an undergraduate degree in art history. And so, you know, obviously you work in the healthcare field. When did you decide that you wanted to pursue an MBA?
So I guess I would say I'm a lifelong learner. Even before I pursued an MBA, I was going to school all of the time, right? So I graduated in 2011 with my bachelor's, but ever since then, as long as I was employed by the university, which has been for over a decade now at this point, I was always taking classes, whether it was a medical terminology class or an informatics class, just always building on my skill level, my knowledge base, constantly learning. I also got my certification as a medical laboratory scientist in histotechnology from ASCP. I used UIC as like a resource to help fund that as well. But UIC offers a tuition waiver for all of their employees. So I just took that opportunity to always learn, even if it wasn't related to my career or the career I want to have for myself in the future. I'm always interested in learning, and I always recommend that to anybody, to college students, to high school students. Find a job at the state, find a job with the city. If you can't afford college, but you want to learn, you want to go to school, find an opportunity. And I would certainly recommend that to undergrads now too. If you're graduating with a 4-year degree, find a job within UIC. If you want to pursue a master's degree, a PhD, a doctorate, UIC will pay for that. Like you should participate in all the benefits that UIC has to offer, and that's a great one. So after going through all those different classes, I realized, you know, I like leading. I like running the business, right? My boss says that each of our areas is like almost like a small business, right? You're running a multi-million-dollar operation, a little business in each of your departments. I was like, you know what? I really need to do better business. I need to know more about finance. So I went and got my MBA. UIC paid for all of it. I went to SIU, but UIC tuition waiver covers any state institution. So I would say that if anybody's interested in getting a secondary degree after they graduate UIC, but they just don't know where to go, I mean, there's so many options. Continue learning, take classes, community college. It's like I said, the more experiences you have, the better educated you are in making the decisions for yourself in the future. So even if you have to pay for it yourself, taking a class here or there, you'll know in taking that class, do I like this? Do I hate this? Maybe that's not for you, you know, but you won't know until you try.
That's definitely such a great perk, benefit, especially for us lifelong learners, because I'm right there with you, Emily. I think, it's great being a staff member at UIC because we get to take classes. And it could be that you're getting a degree or just taking classes just for your own professional development. But it sounds to me like in your situation, taking classes, exploring is what informed your decision for grad school. I really love that advice, because we get a lot of students that are, thinking about grad school and they're overwhelmed because they're like, I don't know what to choose. There's so much to choose from. How do I decide? And so to your point, I think that taking classes and even like when you're working, that can help you decide what program is right for you. So what kind of what other like advice do you have for students who are considering grad school?
I would say if you're considering grad school, if you are an undergraduate now, start reaching out to people in those programs. Like I said, almost no one's going to say no if you have a question or just ignore you. And like I said, if they don't have the bandwidth to meet with you or help you, they certainly probably know somebody who can, and is interested in engaging in that type of conversation. So I would say just start reaching out. Most professors, most TAs, most grad students are happy to talk to anybody, especially a prospective student, but also most people are happy to let you sit in on a lecture or sit in on a Zoom class if it's online, if you're interested, right? But if you are graduating, but you feel like you need to work right after school, which is what I did because I was too scared to jump into something right away. I was like, I have all this student loan debt. I need to start chipping away at that. That was my priority. But working at the state gave me the opportunity to also take classes as a non-degree seeking student and just explore my interests to help guide my decision eventually to pursue an MBA.
And I think that, again, right on point. I feel that that exploration piece can really inform your decision making and reaching out. I think that's a kind of the common theme here too, is reaching out, their information sessions. Thank you so much for sharing that. So,
And
you're in grad.
Oh, really quickly, just like
yeah,
be bold. Like I know it can be nerve-wracking reaching out to people, even just an email. I know people can have a lot more confidence behind a keyboard or behind a phone, but like don't hesitate. Like I said, if your email goes unanswered or your phone call goes unreturned, what does that cost you, right? Like don't fear the rejection. The more you put yourself out there, the more comfortable you're going to be putting yourself out there. So you have to start somewhere.
absolutely. I always tell my students, step out of your comfort zone, and this is definitely one area to challenge yourself and reach out. You just never know.
Right.
No, that's a good tip. So you're in grad school, you graduate. What was the first role that you were able to secure out of grad school?
So I graduated last May with my MBA, and that same May I was offered this assistant director position.
Perfect segue. So that's fantastic. And so can you talk a little bit about what you do in your role as the assistant director of operations in the pathology laboratories?
Sure. So I oversee both the anatomic and clinical pathology laboratories. Before this role, I was the anatomic pathology manager. So my bread and butter and my expertise certainly lies in anatomic pathology. But now that I'm overseeing all areas, basically, anytime you go to the doctor or if you have surgery or pre-surgery workup, anytime a specimen is collected from your person at the doctor's office, whether it's a blood sample, urine collection, tissue, removed from surgery, those all end up in our laboratories. We're the ones that perform the tests on any of your specimens. And then all those results are funneled to your doctor, your oncologist, anybody that you're seeing, your care team essentially. And those results are essentially what help doctors guide the treatment of care.
And so what does your day-to-day look like? What's a typical day for you?
I'd say that a typical day for me is I start every morning with basically like a pulse call with all the area managers in the laboratory just to get an idea of how the day is. It's just a brief overview, a status update on what's happening in each section. We go over staffing, facility concerns, things like that. So we can then report up to our hospital call that we have every day at 9:30. And then that's like a more broader pulse call, whereas the 9 a.m. is a quick call for our laboratory staff. We're a team of about 300, so it's quite large. So all of those section managers report in, let us know how things are functioning for that day, and we report up to the hospital, the CEO, COO, whoever's running the call that day, so that they get an idea for all the units in the hospital, where we are, what are we doing, what does it look like for our patients today. After that, depending on the day, I'll have various meetings, whether it's onboarding new staff, interviews, subcommittees to work towards a workflow change or implementing something with a shared goal with my team members or other team members. And honestly, a lot of my day is just putting out the day's fires, right? In healthcare and in any team setting, right? When you're working with a lot of people, a lot of things happen that need your attention today. Whether it's nurses on a unit or my staff, there's like something wrong with facilities, or there's an IT issue. There's always something, a small fire that needs to be addressed.
So it sounds like your role is very versatile, and obviously you are using all types of different skills. What would you say are some of the critical skills that you use today that you feel that maybe your undergraduate experience gave you some foundation? I feel like students undervalue some of their academic preparation. Can you talk about some of those transferable skills? Like, what do you see today in your role?
Sure. I'll say that my number one skill from undergrad is probably communication. All my writing, everybody's work is done by email these days, right? Like, you're in LAS, I'm at UI Health doing very different roles, but almost all of our communication has been over email, right? So
Yep.
it's really important to develop a good sense of yourself, to kind of project that through your emails, but also just your writing style. I think a lot of people get really used to texting, and that's fine, but there's like a professional level of communication that's required in email, because like I said, everyone does business over email these days if they're not on a Zoom call. So I think being able to conduct yourself and make sure that you seem professional and that it's a complete sentence, a complete thought is super important. And also one area that I was actually surprised to feel like I got a lot out of were my labs. So my chemistry lab, physics lab, writing up lab reports, which I think is probably like the bane of a lot of lab students' experience. That's a tough task. It's cumbersome. It can be annoying and often left to the last 11th hour right before it's due. But that critical thinking and putting your thoughts down on paper is really helpful, specifically, especially in my lab in clinical sciences. I think it really helps in a lot of areas, but especially helps me in the laboratory, because a lot of things are automated these days. I feel like a lot of people are just, oh, well, I can learn that. You're just loading a machine, you're loading an instrument. But no, there's critical thinking, there's theory behind all of this that you need to understand. And just, yeah, I would say communication and going through the exercise of producing laboratory reports, producing research, critical thoughts on paper has been a huge help.
Yeah, I think even like when you shared your typical day and what you do, I was able to identify all the skills, right? The collaboration and teamwork. You talked about how many staff people you work with, oral and written communication, problem solving, critical thinking. And so these are the skills that I know that our students gain through their general coursework, and of course their internships and volunteer work. And so thank you for sharing that, because I feel like it emphasizes and validates the messaging that we share with our students. Um, Emily, what do you enjoy the most about your profession?
I would say, on a broader perspective, I love serving my community and our patients. I also just have a huge soft spot in my heart for UIC, obviously. I just have a lot of dedication and loyalty to UIC and UI Health, but especially our community and our patients. We serve such a unique demographic. Our mission is really to serve the underserved, the underinsured, really the communities that are most in need in Chicago. And I really believe in that mission and value everything that we do to try to make the lives of our community better. I would say on a smaller scale, I really love working with my team. I work with such incredible people. They could be doing anything, I think, because they're so amazing. And I'm just so grateful that they choose to come to work and work with me every day. So I guess in a sense, I really love being a leader. I love working with my team and their direct reports, but I find it so satisfying and fulfilling when somebody I'm working with is able to achieve or accomplish their own personal goal or a professional goal. So I really enjoy helping people, achieve what they want for themselves, whether it's personal or professional.
That was such an easy, response, like it just seems so natural and organic and genuine. And I say this because, and I wanted to ask this question because, when we're talking about career exploration and identifying roles, it's important to recognize, what you value. When you talk about, you value the community and the organization, right? UIC, UI Health, and the people that you work with. And so all of those aspects make a difference in finding career satisfaction and fulfillment and joy. And that's part of it, right? So if we're going to show up motivated, our roles have to give us that sense of purpose, but also that our core values are aligned. And I think that your response captured all of those things. So thank you. So kind of to conclude here, I know that there are students that are interested in working in the healthcare space. Can you share any type of opportunities that you're aware of that would be accessible to undergraduate students that are, available at UI Health?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say that, as I mentioned before, always reach out for volunteer or shadowing opportunities, but also for those who are interested specifically in laboratory sciences, if you see a path for yourself in the future or in healthcare in general to get your foot in the door, we have a standing position open on Handshake for laboratory student aides. They work across the laboratories in various sections, doing various duties. For example, in anatomic pathology, which is in the hospital proper at 1740 West Taylor at UI Health, we have students that archive our specimens, our microscope slides. We have students that deliver specimens to pathologists. We have students across the street that work on small projects in microbiology or hematology. I have an engineering student right now who is working on a process map for us. He knows nothing about the laboratory, and I even asked him, I go, do you want me to tell you like the gist and overview? He's like, nope, I want to start from scratch. I want to ask the questions. So not only do we benefit because we're going to get a process map at the end, it's allowing him to put his engineering skills that he's already learned as an undergraduate to work, right? He gets to actually exercise and practice what he may very well do in a future career outside of undergraduate, where he's actually stepping into a workspace and he has to learn the workflow from nothing. He has no prior experience in laboratory, and certainly not in our operations. So he has to learn and figure out how to ask those critical questions to build a meaningful process map, right? And that's just an example of something that happened today, right? That I have a student working on today. But if students are actually nearing graduation, if this is like their last year, they'll be graduating at the end of this year, I would say that look into our job postings. We will be starting an intern program here at UI Health in our pathology laboratories. The internship will be for medical laboratory sciences. It will be a 1-year internship program. You'll be assigned to one of 4 sections. That would be microbiology, hematology, chemistry, or molecular pathology. After that 1 year of hands-on experience in the laboratory, you could then go on to be a full-time employee as a medical laboratory scientist. With that experience, that 1-year experience as an intern, you would qualify to sit for the board exam to be a board certified medical laboratory scientist. So that's something that we're actively standing up this year. So that would be available to biology, chemistry majors, STEM majors who are interested in working in laboratory sciences. But if that's not really for you, but you just maybe medical laboratory science on the bench isn't something you're interested in, we have all types of opportunities in the Path Labs. We have administrative assistants, we have customer service reps. You don't even necessarily have to have a STEM background to do some of these roles. We have so much outreach. We rely on so many skills outside of laboratory science to make our operation operate, right? So I would say, please look on our job boards, look on Handshake, because there are plenty of opportunities, not just at the Path Labs, but UI Health at large. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I don't know if my information will be shared when this is posted, but please share it because I am happy to be a point of contact for any students that might have questions on how to navigate this if they're interested. And maybe you're not interested in pathology, and that's okay. I'm happy to put you in contact with somebody else if you already have an interest in a specific area. And even if I don't know, like I said, maybe someone I know does, right?
That's incredible. Thank you so much for offering to be that point of contact, but also a source, a referral source. And so I think that, this is the reason why we like to have these conversations and that students can see that there are people that actually do want to help and support their career journey. And I'll definitely be sharing your contact information. And also I appreciate you sharing how there are opportunities for people that are not necessarily in STEM majors. And that's something that we always encourage, that, even for yourself, right? As an art history major, and now you are in the field of pathology. And so that these doors can certainly open. And so again, we greatly appreciate you taking the time to share these opportunities and also to share your story and giving back as an alum of LAS and UIC. Any final thoughts before we go?
I would say, and just encourage everybody to please reach out if you do have questions. I can't promise I'll respond immediately right away, but I will. And I'm happy to help in any way that I can, whether it's questions or recommendations, or to pass you along to someone else that's more in line with your interests, whether it's volunteering or a career, things like that. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great. I'm so honored and flattered that you want to hear about my story as a UIC graduate. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This was great.
Thank you.